This was one of those movies that just had something special written all over it right from day one.
Using the arenas of surfing, spirituality, bank robbing,
Everybody freeze!
greed, hate, murder.
Extraordinary chase scenes. Really good acting.
I didn't know better. I'd say you looked almost happy.
There's beauty, and there's murder, and there's money, and there's sex, and there's just everything.
Fantastic! I mean, we were a moving circus on wheels.
I was at the beach one day, and I had the idea that it would be really interesting to have a FBI agent that goes undercover into the world of surfing.
Rick goes, I got this idea about surfers who are robbing banks, and wow.
The ex-presidents are surfers.
Rick King gave us an article, which was basically that Los Angeles is the bank robbing capital of America.
Everybody freeze! Everybody move! Keep your hands up and your eyes down!
And that's really where it started. And we found a young writer who had written a really good action script by the name of Peter Iliff.
And so he got me paid $6,000, and when you're a waiter, that's a lot of money.
You're trying to tell me the FBI is going to pay me to learn to surf?
I went up and did 3 drafts as I was waiting tables, and the dream came true.
My man.
Yeah. By summer, about 4 months down the road on the 3rd draft, the project sold to Columbia Pictures and to Ridley Scott.
Both Charlie Sheen and Johnny Depp had been up for the Keanu Reeves role. So the script had been floating around for a while. It was called Johnny Utah for a long time.
And then the picture got dropped. They lost their option on it. And it was like one of those films that went, oh, it's not happening anymore.
And after 5 months of building our sets, they tore them down in a day. And it was a very difficult day, to say the least. So 4 years passed by, and then came Jim Cameron and Catherine Bigelow, and they saved the script, and they made it Largo's first film.
I know I was attracted to it right from the beginning because I loved the paradox that it set up. You have these two worlds in direct opposition to one another, the world of surfing juxtaposed with the sort of penal system. I mean, it's a system versus, like, the anti-system.
Catherine was the right choice because not only from a visual standpoint, but because she came at it as a woman, so it was not overt. You know, it has some texture and some subtlety and some depth to the movie. It's just not, you know, all about adrenaline junkies.
It's not about surfers, it's not about presidents, it's not about robbing banks, it's not about the FBI, it's about one kid. This kid named Utah is finding a passage from boyhood to manhood.
My name's Johnny Utah!
Who cares?
Johnny Utah is just a great name, I think, which was drawn obviously from Joe Montana.
Johnny Utah is really an everyman. He is, of course, the person in the story through whose eyes the audience must take this ride.
Johnny Utah, you know, he is a rebel, free-spirited guy, who will get the job done. And, it's the way he is.
I gotta find an approach, a way in. Here we go. Both parents deceased. Airplane crash. He's not amoral. He'll do anything to win, is basically it.
Keanu was Catherine Bigelow's personal battle. A lot of other names were preferred by the studio and by Larry Gordon, but Catherine Bigelow had a thing for Keanu Reeves.
Catherine was fixated on him, and to her credit, she was the one that said, I'm going to turn him into an action star. And to his credit, he, became that character.
FBI! Freeze!
Keanu was a fresh piece of clay, but committed to the effort of telling his story.
You want to nail the bank robbers and be a big hero.
Definitely.
Keanu Reeves has a real sort of close to the vest, yet at the same time a very accessible quality.
With a lot of us, when you call action, we want to go get the lens and do something that'll compel the lens to come to us. And Keanu's fine with a real sense of quiet and letting the lens find him.
He's so comfortable and so kind and so at home in front of the camera and on the set, and just this is where he belongs.
Keanu and I go way back. I believe I did his first movie with him, which is a hockey movie I did in Canada called Youngblood, and he was amazing. And I thought, I bet this guy's gonna go somewhere. He just had that kind of spark in his eyes, you know? And sure enough, he has.
Ever done this before? No, but I've seen it on TV.
Keanu was at the beginning of his career. People didn't really know who this guy was, and of course, Keanu has gone on to become one of the biggest stars in Hollywood.
I am an FBI agent!
I know, man, isn't it wild? There were people that wanted me to play Johnny Utah. And when I said no to Johnny Utah, I felt Bodie was the only character I wanted to play in this movie.
You want the ultimate, you gotta be willing to pay the ultimate price.
Patrick was always the choice to play Bodie. Always. I mean, just he was perfect for the part. He was physical, he was spiritual, intellectual. I mean, you know, everything you needed. I mean, from the first day, he was Bodie.
That was a big, big whoop, you know, that Patrick Swayze was in the movie. It was a really huge whoop.
Patrick had just come off the movie Ghost, which was an enormous hit, and he was at the height of his stardom. So he comes into this movie and he lets his hair grow long and gets that tan, and you know, his physique was in the best shape of his life. And he was just a god. I mean, he was like the man diva.
I just thought he was fantastic. It was such a demanding role physically that I wonder how many other actors could have pulled that off.
During one of the football sequences, his knee blew up. Yeah, I mean, his knee was giant, was like triple the size of a normal knee. And he would have the doctor come down and drain it at the end of the night. And he was there the next day charging. He was hardcore.
It was just so much fun to play this character because there was nothing you could do that was wrong as long as you believed it.
Bodie's a character where we tried to go really deeply inside who this guy is and why he was doing what he wants to do.
Bodie really encompasses a lot of beliefs that I have in us as people somehow taking charge of our world and our lives again.
We stand for something. To those dead souls inching along the freeways in their metal coffins, we show them that the human spirit is still alive.
Patrick's a wonderful person to work with. Anytime, any day. I'll go into combat artistically, spiritually, physically, mentally.
Get out of the way, kid! God damn it!
Busey and I, we love each other. On certain levels, we're cut from the same cloth. We're both very spontaneous beasts and get really passionate about what we're doing.
It was an honor to get shot by Gary, the masochist. I live right next door to Gary, who is a national treasure and should get anything he wants for the rest of his life just because he's such a brilliant actor. God, I wish I had some of his energy.
Busey was wild. We all loved him. We all loved to hang with him.
I love Gary, you know, but is Gary here?
Gary Busey is a very, very good actor. Sometimes he gets carried away with little tangents.
Now, this is a Camacho, the size of a Spanish cigarrito. I'd love to do a commercial at least once. That's my audition for a commercial, folks.
Gary Busey. Everybody's got a Gary Busey story.
You know, he's Gary. He's his own person.
Sex wax.
Yeah.
You're not into kinky shit, are you, Angelo?
Not yet.
Gary's not the kind of actor who only looks at his little world and what's gonna make him better. He's really interested in what makes the whole film work.
Right around that corner, there is a sandwich shop. They sell meatball sandwiches. Best I've ever tasted. Would you go get me two?
Fabulously interesting choices. I mean, the meatball sandwich thing is, come on, okay, give me two. Utah, give me two.
Utah, give me two.
Pappas is kind of a bigger-than-life character. You know, he's kind of the noise to Utah's quiet, you know, and Gary's perfect for it.
Listen, you snot-nosed little shit! I was taking shrapnel and K-Sod while you were crapping in your hands and rubbing it on your face!
You mad?
Yeah, I'm mad!
He had just survived that terrible motorcycle accident, which was earlier in his career, and this was kind of the beginning of his comeback trail.
It feels good, doesn't it? Like you're still alive, right? Yeah!
That was one of the first movies I did after my massive brain surgery and my death. So I was fresh, too. I was fresh in several ways in that pond we call Point Break.
That is your surfing contact? Female. Blue eyes.
I know I'm not the stereotypical girlfriend in movies.
You want to commit suicide, you do it someplace else.
In the script, we had envisioned a more of a quintessential surf chick.
You know, all the people that are blonde and stars now, we saw, who are 35, we saw when they were 20. And she walked in and she just gave the best audition.
Then I got a call back, and then I got a call back, and then they said, you're gonna read with Keanu Reeves, and I was like, oh, cool, okay, you know. And it was just great. We were just like two kids, you know, just happy to be there.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting choice. That's primarily Catherine's choice, really to go against type. Instead of the California girl, blonde, you know, and just to go with more of a physical, athletic type person.
Whose ball is it? Who works here?
I love Lori Petty because she's one of those chicks that if you think you can do it, she'll do it better.
I've always had this thought that I can do, if it can be done, I can do it.
Just paddling out in the big surf, it's total commitment.
You can't just call time out, stroll on into the beach if you don't like the way things are going.
The key for us is, in our group of 4, there were 2 extraordinarily good surfers, Bo Jesse Christopher and John Filden.
Putting us in the water in Hawaii and in Southern California at some of the best places and being paid to do it, you know, it was very comfortable, it was very exciting. For me, it was a perfect gig.
Fucking A! I love this fucking job.
We're getting towed in, we're getting pulled up and towed into huge waves, and they're filming us. It is the coolest thing that I've ever done in my life.
We could always go to them on a big wave and sell the reality of the group surfing.
They just hired so many great actors. Inside, I was thinking, look at these great actors around here. Outside, I'm like pretending to be, you know, cooler than everybody else because I was a better surfer, and that's so bullshit. That's typical surfer. God, I'm so embarrassed about it now.
I wished I could have been a surfer in the movie, but it just seemed like if you weren't going to be in that gang, the gem scene-stealing role was playing the head of the FBI.
Special Agent John Utah, day number 1 in L.A. Welcome aboard.
And it was a great role. There's just a scene-stealing rant in the beginning of the movie, which is this phenomenally challenging walk and talk, integrating at the time what was really cutting-edge Steadicam work, and it worked.
Yes, sir.
It took the entire day to get the shot. From the actor not quite nailing it, to the camera not quite nailing it, to background people hitting the camera, to a light flaring. The stuff kept going wrong. We must have shot that thing 40 or 50 times. I remember the one sequence I could not get out of my head is, you know nothing, you know less than nothing. If you even knew that you knew nothing, that'd be something, but you don't. It was just, I worked on it so long, it's still in my mouth. And I haven't said those words for 20 years. And so it's very interesting.
Does either one of you have anything even remotely interesting to tell me? Caught my first tube this morning, sir. Catherine is, she's almost like a female Utah in the sense of motivated and willful and wants it to happen.
Women oftentimes do macho guy movies a lot better than guys do because they have the ability to stand back. And when they don't pass judgment and bring a deeper level of truth to it, wonderful things can happen.
They're better with details. Women are. They just have that over men. That's just the way it is.
There's too much testosterone here.
It was really thrilling working with Catherine, who's this really dynamic, very individuated woman who had a vision of what she wanted the film to be.
She did a fabulous job, and she's, you know, the movie is all to her credit. Her vision really came true.
People think that it's softer because of Catherine, because she's a female, and that's not the truth at all. She was so in love with the action. When there was a scene with me and Keanu, who were just supposed to be kissing on the beach, she was like, oh God, whatever, just get over it, get on with it. You know, she's a wonderful director, but it was funny. She loves action a lot more than just being, you know, still.
The fact that Catherine directed it makes it infinitely more interesting. I mean, she made a foot chase as exciting as a car chase.
The beauty of that sequence really is its simplicity. It's not complicated, but you get the sort of visceral part of it because you got somebody running around with a camera right behind them.
We used, you know, a pogo cam, which is just basically a camera, you know, on a pole, which gives you a much more live feeling. It's not so smooth, and you can actually put the camera through windows and throw it over walls, and you can do things with it because it's not really attached to you.
I would run behind with the camera. I'd run looking back at Keanu. I'd run in front of them and see both of them running. I'd run behind them and see them running.
The foot chase, fortunately for me, Patrick was in Europe promoting Ghost, while we did it. He was an amazing athlete, so to be able to perform to his level, I had to have it together.
Patrick wanted to do everything himself, and then when he saw the film afterwards, he went, "That was great. I'm glad I didn't do it."
Rock and roll.
You know, the stuff where we're wearing masks and running around, it was hot, you know, we're wearing this mask, you can't see. I'm like, can you even see who's doing this? You know, I think somebody was doubling me, and I'd be like, you look just like me in that suit and mask, man. Do you want to do that? And they're like, yeah, because they love it. They're like, give it to me, bring it on, work. I'm like, go for it.
Sorry, Johnny. Looks like you don't get to be president.
I doubled Keanu where he tackled one of the punk rockers out a window. Glenn had picked a location where he had a window and no tree in front of the window, so we thought we'd do it, you know, right in front of this great window, so you see our bodies come out. And then the director had a different thought, let's do it where you can't see the window and there's a tree there. It's just a unique way of shooting a fight sequence that I wasn't used to. You usually go wide and then you go tight. This seemed to be tight, 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 and it was really intense and really violent.
Catherine said, is it possible for the actors to do their own fights? So I set up weekends where I had everybody that was supposed to be involved in it, including Gary Busey and everybody, to come to a location, and we worked out, and I taught them how to do fights from the ground up, how to move, why you're doing it, what's happening, where's the camera. But I said, if you don't come and practice, I can't use you. And they all pitched in and worked very hard, except for one, Anthony of the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
That would be a waste of time.
I guess he was singing around and everything else. So, of course, the first punch, he was out. And he didn't like that at all. But from then on, I had no trouble with him. And he was out there working with us all the time.
This was a fun movie to make because everything we did hadn't been done before.
You're gonna jump or jerk off. That's my man.
We came up with a skydiving rig with these kind of telescoping arm cranes, and they built a body thing with a post coming out of the center of it where you laid in that and strapped yourself in and then put your clothes on over it.
So like by putting everyone on their own crane, allowing people to move independently of each other and go out of frame, come down, it makes you feel like you're actually there.
But the secret was to also float the camera, have it on a unit, and float it. And we had it so we could turn and oscillate, and it worked out very well.
Great, isn't it? You're doing good.
You can't talk in free fall. You got 120 to 200 mile an hour winds, which is nothing but a giant roar. So there is a little bit of poetic license taken with us having a conversation. You pull it. No, you pull it. You're gonna die, man. Pull it.
Do it or you're gonna die, Johnny. 6 seconds. You're gonna be meat waffles.
Patrick started jumping on his own. And he used to come in and say, oh, look, Peter, look what I did this weekend. And I would say, no, you can't do that, you know, insurance. Anyway, ultimately, we agreed that if he would stop jumping while we were filming, he could actually jump out of the plane after everything was done, which is what he did.
Adios, amigo.
And it's one of the great shots in the movie because he falls out of the plane and you're waiting for the cut, and it never happened.
Amazing! Fucking amazing!
It's very funny because I had to battle insurance companies to get to do the skydiving in the movie. And I never came close to dying once. But they never said one word about me getting my brains pounded in by the biggest surf on this planet. And I almost died 6 to 10 times. I thought I was out of here. I had this bone on my sternum that I injured being on much bigger waves than I had any business being on. So we had to groove out my surfboards, build up my wetsuits to try to get me off that bone. But of course, it's not possible. Every time you turtle through a wave, it just slams you. All I cared about was getting good enough to where when they cut from me to my big wave double, that I wouldn't look like Bobby Darin on a soundstage in a 50s Beach Bunny movie.
Technologically, you can now have a surfing double and remove the double's face and put in your actor's face because of computers. We couldn't do that 15 years ago. We couldn't even create the rain that occurs in the final sequence.
Look at it! This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, man. Just let me go out there. Let me get one wave before you take me. One wave.
We had hired Derek Dorner, who's a very famous longboard surfer and is a lifeguard at Sunset Beach, to double Patrick in case Waimea ever broke.
Waimea at that time had the largest break in the world. We were very fortunate to be there the 2 days that Waimea broke, which is very rare.
Waimea hadn't broken in almost 2 years.
It was a pretty tall wave, and I don't think anybody ever fallen off a wave like that on purpose.
Derek would say, I want the 4th wave in this set coming up, and then our guys would block these people from all over the world who were obviously not particularly happy about being told they couldn't get on a wave.
Too bad. Finally get your waves and it's totally closed out.
Well, it was hard for him because he spent his whole life surfing these big waves, trying to stay on his board, and we were paying him to fall off these waves, which are massive and very dangerous.
I'm sure he got banged up pretty good. I'm sure he was sore, put it that way.
We reshot the end of the movie, not him falling off the wave, but the scene preceding it. We did a big reshoot up in Oregon 6 months later. Keanu had gone off and done, I think, Bill and Ted in between, and had grown his hair. And Patrick, in the meantime, had gone off to do a movie in India and cut his hair.
Do something, brah!
But it works for the story in the sense that the Bodhi character is trying to hide, so he's sort of changed his look. And Keanu has gotten disillusioned with the FBI, so he's becoming a little bit more of a rebel.
I think this movie changed everyone involved with it in some way for the better.
I had a blast from the beginning to the end of the movie.
We had so much fun doing that stuff. Skydiving and robbing banks and surfing, so much fun.
I think the film holds up really well because the surfing phenomenon has become just that. It's just exploded.
It was a real party, adrenaline, cultural phenomenon at that time, and it seems to be timeless.
Point Break, it still is in my heart. It still is in my heart. It still is a wonderful experience. When it comes on, I watch it and laugh at places that I know what happened that nobody does, because I was there.
For me and Busey and Keanu and Laurie and all my guys in the gang, something special happens, you know, and he just jumps off the screen, and I live for that.
When you're out in big nature, you can't help but be charged by the spirituality.
The energy the ocean has is just, it's an incredible thing. It's like a real cleansing experience.
For me, the one and only and primary source of decompression, I use the water in the ocean as a way to sort of take that hot shower at the end of the day.
Still surfing? Every day.
It gives you room to find that enlightenment, if that's the right word to call it.
And it is kind of like a double-edged sword. The sea is such a beautiful, serene thing, but the power of Mother Nature when she's angry is something to be respected.
So you really do feel that you're in the hands of a power that's very, very strong. And obviously the bigger the waves and the better shape they are, the stronger the power.
The charge of the waves is what it's about for me. It's nice just to get out in the water, even on small days.
When you're out in Mother Ocean, when you bring the amount of respect that she, you know, demands you bring, it's hard not to put on some of that spirituality, and it feels good, to tell you the truth.
Can't see shit out here, I'm gonna die.
Just feel what the wave is doing. Then accept its energy, get in sync, then charge with it. You don't need to see.
I think it has to do with being involved with something which is bigger than you and being tied into something which is eternal.
It's not a science, it's an art. So, you know, you are interacting with nature in an artistic way. There is a spiritual side to surfing, but it's very personal.
Spirituality was a big part of this film.
They don't have any real understanding of the sea, so they'll never get the spiritual side of it.
Hey, you're not gonna start chanting or anything, are you?
I might.
Surfers, they're out in the water, You know, they're inspired by God and all these forces greater than themselves.
Sometimes, like, surfing will click you into the oneness of how everything's alive. So there's the ocean, and there's you, and you're riding the ocean, and there's the sun and the wave, and then all of a sudden you're just, and you're not doing it anymore.
Just being at peace with the ocean and knowing that the ocean could crush you and destroy you in a flash, but it lets you, you know, partake and enjoy and do these things at the same time.
When you live in that inherently spiritual world of alone on a surfboard with just you and Mother Nature, so it changes you.
If I didn't know better, I'd say you looked almost happy.
There's no feeling quite like riding a wave.
If I can get a really long, great ride, I'm thinking about it, I'm dreaming about it, I'm talking with my buddies about it, you know, and people who don't surf just can't believe it, that you can sit there and talk about what, you know, an 11-second, 5-second experience, you know, days later with the other people that have shared it.
I gotta be crazy.
But are you crazy enough?
It's a one-man sport that challenges you against your own physical and emotional well-being, against the backdrop of nature.
Something happens in the mix. Something primal about going back into the ocean, for one, and then challenging yourself with the obstacles that presents, or the opportunities. I call waves opportunities. Some people call them obstacles. People are obstacles.
And I just knew instinctively that that was for me. That was something that I was going to stick with for the rest of my life. It was part of who I am, and I'll always, you know, cherish that first and foremost.
Does either one of you have anything even remotely interesting to tell me?
Caught my first tube this morning, sir.
Surfing had a persona of blonde party-goer beach guys. You know, I think that there is a certain, you know, preconceived notion like that.
Why can't I just walk around with this thing under my arm and act stone, ask a few questions?
I think surfing was perceived sort of as an outlaw thing when this movie was made, and it's really changed a lot since.
You want the ultimate, you gotta be willing to pay the ultimate price. It's not tragic to die doing what you love.
Our persona of these surfers was different than the stereotype prior to that, you know. These guys were, you know, were thinking people. They were, you know, into the waves and the zen, and they wanted to be one with the ocean, and they loved what they did.
Surfing is a unique thing, and they took it seriously in this movie, and they allowed us to express ourselves in ways that I don't think had ever been expressed in movies ever before.
There's a real depth to most surfers. I was truly blown away at how much more spiritual surfers are than I would have ever had any. They're not like totally gnarly, let's bolt dudes.
Now surfing and snowboarding and skateboarding and all this extreme boarding, you know, it's huge.
People that do all these other things, these Academy Award-winning producers and writers this year, they all surf.
Point Break, I think, really opened up some doors for big wave surfing and where performance is going in surfing in general.
I'm not sure that I would take credit for it, but I think breaking open surfing and exposing it created a desire for people to surf.
I think that surf culture is doing fine all of its own. It's such a, you know, Point Break, I think is basically hung on for the ride.
Surfing has been around a long time. There's always been an intrigue with the men in the sea. The spiritual aspect of a guy sitting on a surfboard in glassy water as the sun's coming up over the ocean behind you, is just, there's nothing more beautiful than that. And it really becomes a very personal journey. I would have to say that Point Break was probably the most fun movie I ever did in my life.
It's about going for it, and it is definitely an adrenaline rush, and I enjoy it.
You never know what's coming your way, but it's kind of fun, the challenge.
We get heavy adrenaline pumps sometimes doing some of the work that we do. Explosions, high falls, car hits,
And the stunts are just off the wall.
He's a real searcher.
What's he searching for?
The ride. The ultimate ride.
We all want to kind of push the envelope and stand as close to the edge as possible.
We search for that edge, that place that takes us out of our bodies. And that edge can be a very dangerous place.
You know, it's sort of testing yourself. You know, it's you against either a wave or a mountain or jumping out of an airplane.
100% pure adrenaline. Other guys snort for it, jab a vein for it, and all you gotta do is jump.
The film's about surfing, but they're adrenaline junkies. And so I wanted to find as many ways as I could to establish adrenaline. And I brought in skydiving, which is, you gotta have cojones in your throat for that one.
Johnny, you're about to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. How do you feel about that?
So the first jump is beyond fear. It's 100% sensory overload. It's like, what am I doing? This is absolutely out of its mind. But once you get on the ground, it's like, oh my God, get me back up there.
How do you like it, Johnny? Amazing! Fucking amazing!
The scariest thing I've ever done in my life. And I've done a couple scary things, but jumping out of an airplane, if you ever get tired of living, or if you ever get bored, or if you ever, heartbroken or whatever, jump out of an airplane. Life is sweet.
I'll tell you what, if you want to know what skydiving is like, get a friend on a freeway, late at night, no traffic, clean and sober, go 120 miles an hour. Have your friend drive 120 miles an hour. And all you have to do is stick your head out the window. That's how fast you're going, 120. But you don't feel like you're falling. And that's what Patrick kept saying. You don't feel like you're falling. You don't feel like you're falling. And you don't.
You could see somebody who's a speck in the distance and go into a tracking position and just take off and go from 120 miles an hour to 200 to 300 miles an hour in the blink of an eye. It truly was the experience of flying.
Swayze, from day one, said, guys, look, I want to pop in this videotape and show you something that I'm doing that I'd like you to do as well.
We gotta go, life is short. You're gonna love this.
Swayze, on my back. Gary, you gotta do it, you gotta do it, you gotta come out and do it, you gotta come out and do it. Finally, to shut him up, I said, okay, I'll go skydiving with you. Okay, I will. But I was committed to him, and I didn't want to go. Damn it!
But I didn't do any extra madness. And they were all calling me names. I'm like, yeah, and I'm a girl. Okay, girl.
Patrick Swayze was out practicing afterwards on weekends and everything else, doing skydiving.
They'd pick him up from the set and take him out. He'd go skydiving.
Well, the challenge that the production placed in my way is no way while you're shooting this movie are you going to be jumping out of a perfectly good airplane.
They're like, you're not insured when you go up on that plane, you're not insured. We're making a movie. If you get hurt, do you have any idea how much money you're costing us?